join us for the Animation Academy. Please welcome your sketch artist, Matthew DeWater.
Hello, hi everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome today to the Animation Academy. Welcome to Epcot. Welcome to the Festival of the Arts. It's my favorite time of year here, celebrating all of the artists and the art, and everybody's kind of different takes on things. Super exciting time here at Epcot. So glad to share it with you. Thanks for coming. A little bit about me. My name is Matt. I am a character artist for Disney Consumer Products, which is the department, as the name suggests. We do all of the character art, the graphic design, everything that is going to end up on a Disney product. So whether that's something that you can buy here in the parks, whether it's something you go, back home and go to Target, Walmart, wherever we work on kind of everything across the board, including cruise lines and Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, classics, everything. It's a really cool gig. I get to kind of touch a little bit of everything, which I love. I at this point, I especially focus on princess and Frozen stuff, which is exciting. Love kind of the classics and the fairy tales. Today, though, wanted to kind of throw it back. Some of my very favorites that we all grew up with are some of the very, some of the first Walt Disney classics. So do some original characters today. For our first show, we're going to be drawing Dumbo. We have any Dumbo fans in the house? Very good. Raise your hand if you've been on Dumbo, the ride over at Magic Kingdom. Very good. Classic, of course. So excited to draw Dumbo. Super cute, super fun. Sometimes the cute and simple characters are, deceivingly cute and simple. So we'll walk through it step by step. Let me see how many of you have done an animation class like this before here at Disney or anywhere else. We got a lot of veterans, and how many of you this is your very first time doing anything like this? And a lot of first timers. That's great. So we'll take it slow. We'll go step by step and talk through it together. So we'll sit and jump in. I will say I'm going to call out. I'm told we're having a little bit of screen technical difficulty issues in case it's flickering or anything like that. Bear with us. As we say in showbiz, show must go on, right? So we get to draw together, and the team is on it. So, all right. So whenever I sit down to draw, there we go. Whenever I sit down to draw, I like to pull up reference, right? This is a classic model sheet from the actual film itself. Back in the 1940s, late 1930s, when they started working on it, into the 40s. And so the animators would use a model sheet like this because multiple artists, sometimes lots of artists, are working on the same character, right? So they have to have a way to keep it consistent from artist to artist for the final film. So they use stuff like this, model sheets, to show different expressions, different angles, and help the artists as they draw. So today, I still pull up these classic model sheets to help me draw, and I think a lot of, especially you younger artists out there, I think a lot of young artists think that using a model sheet or using reference to draw, look at something and draw it is cheating in a way. And I'm here to tell you it is not. That's what we do as professional artists all day long. We pull up model sheets and use them for reference. So I'm going to have this here with me as we draw Dumbo. So we'll jump in. And can you guys still hear me? Yes. Okay, good. So if you've done a show like this before, you will know that there it is. That's one. All right, guys. Okay. All good? Yeah? Test? Okay, cool. So if you've done an animation show like this before, you'll know that a lot of characters start with a circle for the head, right? So, and Dumbo is no different. We're gonna start with a nice big circle in the middle. And like I said, we're gonna go step by step, and as we get started, keep it kind of loose and light. We don't have to draw a nice dark circle just yet. I'm gonna keep it nice and light, and this is just gonna be kind of our guideline to show us where to get started here. So my circle's about the size of a, baseball. And then once I have my circle, I'm going to do a guideline right down the middle. Now this one, keep especially light, as it's not going to be kind of part of our finished drawing. It's just a map to where we can help keep things even on each side here. Okay, and so we'll start to jump in. Now from here, it kind of, I tend to, it depends on the character where I start. A lot of characters I start with the eyes. A lot of characters I start with even the nose to kind of ground things. We'll see that next show. But for Dumbo, I like to start with those cute little round cheeks. So to kind of give us the overall shape of his head. So right over here, kind of on the bottom, if the circle had a corner, which of course it does not, if the circle had a corner, I'm going to come down here and give Dumbo his little cheeks from side to side. And we can already kind of start to see the overall shape of Dumbo's head. So it comes from one side all the way down, and you'll see I'm still keeping it very kind of light and loose and finding that line as I go. And once we get there, I'll kind of come back in and tighten things up. Okay? And so now that I do have kind of the overall shape of Dumbo's head, now I will come back in and add the eyes. So the bottom of our circle is going to be kind of what we use as a grounding plane for the eyes. Dumbo has this big, giant elephant forehead, right? So right here on the bottom of the circle, I'm going to come in and kind of right on in the middle of each side, I'm going to draw a nice, simple little oval right on that guideline. And you kind of want to use that middle guideline to help you space them. There's a little bit more, you know, when you're drawing a human character, a good rule of thumb is kind of, there's one eye width between the two eyes. Not always across the board, but a good rule of thumb. For Dumbo, there's almost two eye widths, right? His eyes are kind of closer to the sides of his face. Okay, so I've got my two eyes, and I can come in and we'll just place the circles for the pupils. Dumbo especially has these kind of nice big human pupils. And so you'll see I'm favoring, on this side, I'm favoring the inside of the eye. And so over on this other side, I'm also going to favor the inside of the eye. So we still get a bit of that, the white of the eye. And that kind of gives the illusion that he's looking at us rather than looking up or out. Of course, you know, as artists, feel free to take all the creative liberty you want here. You can, of course, have his pupils looking up and out over at his ears or anything like that. Now, with Dumbo, we usually add a couple little eyelashes. And this is funny, Dumbo and our next character later on, both boys, but we include a couple eyelashes on there. For Dumbo, it's just two little eyelashes. A lot of times with, you know, animated characters, we don't do that for the boys, but, you know, with these ultra kind of cute, super adorable characters from the 1940s, when Disney was really kind of solidifying the style, the classic Disney style, they did include those little eyelashes. Okay? And once I've got the eyes, I'm going to come up here. Now, I didn't actually draw a guideline straight through the center of his noggin here, but if it was right in the middle, that's where his eyebrows are going to go. So right in the middle of that circle, I'm going to do one little curved line and then actually a second little curved line just on top. It's kind of more, it's less, you know, he doesn't have kind of a hairy eyebrow the way a lot of characters would. It's a fleshy part that kind of raises up, right? So that's why we use two little indications for his eyebrows. Okay, he's starting to come to life. You can already kind of see a expression happening. And I'm going to come back down here to the bottom. And under his eyes, I like to, whenever I have a character smiling, I like to kind of give just a little bit of an indication of that under the eyes. You smile real big, your cheeks kind of push up into the bottom of your eyes. So just a slight indication of that right on the bottom. Like the top of his cheek is pushing into his eye, just a little bit there. Helps with the cute factor for sure. And then once we have that line, if you imagine that cheek there pushing up, we're going to draw the smile lines kind of right under it. So there's one right here, and it's just a simple curved shape right there underneath the cheek, and then another one over on this side, right underneath the cheek. Okay. Now at this point, this character could turn into a lot of things. The classic Disney style has a lot of the same elements happening, right? If I added a big nose and a nice wide smile and a couple medium-sized ears, this could turn into Dopey pretty quick. But for Dumbo, we're of course going to add this trunk. So bear with me here. The shape is not symmetrical. Of course, with the trunk, part of the fun of the trunk, as we see on this model sheet, is playing around with the expression, right? You can do kind of whatever you want with it. He's happy, it's up, he's trumpeting, it's sad, it's loose and kind of hanging down, drooping. Today we're going to kind of do a smile with the trunk. So coming off the side here, I'm going to do kind of an S shape. It comes down underneath those cheeks and curves back up around like that. And so even though we don't really see his mouth, because of course it's underneath his trunk, we kind of get the illusion of it by creating that S curve, and you still get kind of that shape of a smile. You can tell he's smiling already. So we've got the S curve, and then on the other side, kind of going to do another S curve, but it's going to flow with that first one we did and create that trunk. And then it kind of glides right into those smile lines that we started with. Comes all the way down, following the S curve. And we have a trunk. For the tip, it's going to wrap kind of underneath, right? So what I'm going to do here to create, we're always looking for ways, even when we're drawing a flat 2D character on pencil on paper, looking for ways to give that little bit of illusion of depth, right? So for the trunk, I'm going to come in the back here and kind of curve it around to the bottom. So I started on the top, behind the front of the trunk, and then kind of gave it a little bit of an angle and circle back around to the bottom of the trunk. And you'll see how that kind of creates this curve shape where it comes down and loops back around and underneath. And you'll see kind of as I go, now that I kind of have my placement for a lot of this stuff, I can start to solidify some of those loose and light shapes that we started with. So I like those cheeks, so I'm going to come in here and kind of darken them up a little bit. And while I'm here on the trunk, elephants, of course, their skin and their trunks, that skin is very kind of loose and baggy. There's elements of that in Dumbo, but of course it's way simplified. So there's a few kind of indications of that kind of loose trunk skin. So just a few simple notch marks on his trunk will do it, kind of give that illusion. And there we are. We'll let everybody catch up with the trunk for just a minute here. Little fun fact about Dumbo: I mentioned that it was made in the 1940s. There was a lot of kind of pressure on the film because, as we know, Snow White was the first Disney film to come out in 1937. It blew up. It was super popular. It made so much money. The studio was rolling in it. They built an entire new studio lot, which were over in Burbank, where they still use today, and it was a great time. And then Pinocchio came out, and Fantasia came out. They were working on Bambi, and these films all, of course we look at them today as absolute Disney bona fide classics, right? They did not make a lot of money. They were considered commercial failures at the time, and which is pretty wild to think about these days. But so they kind of had to pivot a little bit on movies like Pinocchio, on movies like Fantasia. They were the budgets on those movies were so high. The artists were just going all out, pulling out every trick in the book to really plus all that stuff up, and it shows in the films. They're gorgeous. But for Dumbo, they deliberately went, we're going to make a very small, relatively, short, cute, small budget film. And so it also shows in the film. It's much simpler. The action, the animation itself is much kind of more reserved and charming. That's part of what makes the film great, certainly in my opinion, is that kind of small charm that it has. It's only just over an hour long, so it's one of the shortest Disney movies there is. But at the time, it actually saved the studio. So they didn't spend a whole lot of time or money on it, and it came out and it made a bunch of money. So they were able to kind of continue from there. And then, of course, they got later into the 40s and into the war, and that kind of threw the studio for another loop until they came back with Cinderella. But in the early 40s, Dumbo is known to have kind of saved the studio. So thank you, Dumbo. Okay, so I'm going to come back up here, and we're going to add his little cute yellow hat. So right on top here, you'll see how I'm not treating it right in the middle. It's not symmetrical. It's going to kind of flop over to the side a little bit. So I'm going to start with a oval right at the top to kind of show where it's sitting on his forehead. And then 2 simple lines at the edge of that oval, kind of bring it up to the top. And then I do one more oval. So we're kind of creating this cylinder shape. So I've got my 2 ovals and the lines connecting them. And that's creating kind of that brim of the hat, thick brim of the hat. And then from inside that top circle is where that kind of floppy circus style hat comes in. So comes up out of the middle of the oval, loops around, then you can bring it back down into the oval. And so that's another, just like the trunk, we're really creating a lot of 3D space here with just a few simple shapes and lines. And so you can see how that hat kind of sits around, flopping over his forehead here. And now same thing, once I have his hat on, I can kind of come in here to the sides of his head and solidify that shape. You'll notice here on the bottom, I'm kind of letting the sides of his head flow into those cheeks a little bit, so we don't have that hard edge of the circle. And there you go, we've got Dumbo. No, of course, kids, what are we missing? We're missing his ears, yes. Dumbo's ears, all important. We might not even have enough room on this paper for them. It really is, you can, go crazy with the ears. You can have them hang down, is really, really cute if you do, if you have his thing here in his trunk, and then his ears are kind of like this, right? Really cute. You can have them really perked up. They're, if you've got his hat, you've got his trunk, and they're kind of perked up and like he's almost ready to fly, right? Something like that. You don't have to draw those. I'm gonna do kind of a nice, iconic, neutral pose for his ears. So, if we come off the side of his head, again, if there were a corner on this circle, that's kind of where the ears are gonna come off. Come down, and then kind of loop back up, another kind of nice curve S shape for the top of his ears. And we can do the same thing on the other side. You could, they don't have to be perfectly symmetrical, certainly. But I'm gonna do more or less the same shape on either side. So we've got the tops of his ears. And then just for a little bit of thickness to the ears, we're gonna see a little bit of the gray part of the ears. The majority of them are, it's the pink inside of the ears. But I'm just gonna do another, it's that same exact shape that we just did, just a little bit lower down. And then it flows into the edge there. And that creates kind of that top lip of the ear. So same thing over here. Same shape, just kind of flows from one end into the side of his head. Okay. So we've got the top of the ear, and now I'm going to come back down here, and the rest of the ear, like I said, kind of do what you want. I'm going to bring it in, another nice appealing S curve, and loop it way up underneath. And it kind of comes almost underneath where like his mouth would be. Of course, in reality, it's attaching to the side of his face, but because we see those cute cheeks are poking out, it's almost behind where we actually see the cheeks. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Nice S curve. You hear me keep saying the term S curve, which in animation, S curves are all important. It's kind of just that nice flow of the pencil that creates a really appealing and cute shape. So same thing, bring it back up under the cheek. Okay, and just to finish things off, I'm going to add his little clown collar in there that he wears in the circus. So starting at the cheek, I'm going to come out, and then it's just kind of a up and down curve shape, and it follows all the way around underneath the trunk and to the other side of the cheeks. So, if you're just looking at just the collar by itself, it's basically just this shape, right? And when you do that around his neck, it kind of creates this oval shape. And then the collar is red, and then it has a yellow stripe right there, so it follows that same curve, but it just goes like that. So I'm going to do the same thing down here, follow the same curve as the bottom. But a little ways up. Okay, and then just to give it some actual heft to it so that it could be yellow, I'm going to do one more of that same shape. very close to the last one, so that we're creating that yellow stripe. So once you have everything in place, that is pretty much Dumbo. I'm going to come back in here and kind of solidify some of my loose, rough, sketchy lines. So we can call it finished. If you like, sometimes, depending on the ear pose and everything, sometimes we add a little bit of an indication of like the fold in his ears. Not always. Sometimes it's there, just a simple line coming off the edge. Kind of show a little bit of motion and sort of texture inside the ear. That is going to do it. That's Dumbo. Before you call it finished, make sure you sign your autograph on there. We are at the Festival of the Arts after all. You guys are all artists. Your artist signature on there, and we can call it finished. But before we do say goodbye, I would love to see everybody's Dumbos, and there's going to be a test. Just kidding. But I do want to see Dumbos. I've got papers flying in. I'm going to take a selfie with all you guys. Let's see. Now, usually when I take a selfie with anybody, we find something that the character says. To kind of say for our photo, but fun fact, Dumbo is the only main Disney character that does not say a single word in his whole film. So instead we're going to say, you can fly on 3. So hold them up, let me see. See, this is my favorite part. I love seeing everybody's Dumbos. Even those of you who have never drawn a single thing before, it looks wonderful. So pat yourselves on the back, you can fly on 3. 1, 2, 3. You can fly! Awesome.